Welcome, everyone. And let's start with a bow. Tonight, the topic is, once again, and before we pass on to other topics next week, vipashyana. And we have 3 chapters and a lot of material. This is such a profound subject. Vipassana is the practice that goes from the very beginning to the very end of the path. It just deepens and becomes more profound. Sometimes it has different names, and yet it's really the same practice. I'm going to start with the last chapter that was assigned, chapter 49, called Self-Perpetuating Awareness, because I think it really sets the stage for the other 2. And maybe we'll end up with it as well, chapter 49. The very title of this chapter, Self-Perpetuating Awareness, has to do with the fact that Vipassana awareness is already here. It's not something that we turn on and turn off, but rather we just tune into it because it is beyond I or any other person. In the very beginning of this chapter 49, he says, in Vipassana, you develop a sense of the world containing its own intelligence. Since the world automatically has its own intelligence, you do not need to add a new perspective to it. Instead, you could just tune into that intelligence. And that is what we do when we meditate. We come back from dreams, from thoughts of any kind, into this simple awareness that is already here. It's in the walls, it's in the floor, it's in the air, it's in all the objects that inhabit this space. It's always here, no matter what you're thinking. You just get distracted and you sort of lose sight of it a little bit because you get fixated in thoughts or emotions. And then you come back because the thoughts or emotions are always temporary. They have a beginning and an end. And when they end, here we are, right back here in this space of awareness. And this space is full of phenomena. The phenomena of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and taste, touch, that's the five senses, and also the phenomena of mind. And they all are arising and passing away in this space all the time. We just get distracted and lose track of it from time to time. So he says, you are simply relating to color, form, and experience. That's what brings us back from the dreams. You have body and sense perceptions. The purpose of Vipassana is to fully experience and communicate those sense perceptions. You are not lost in complexities. You never miss an inch. The point is that you experience reality as real. And the point is that it's not something we have to do. It's something we have to come back to. Remember, because it's always here, this simple awareness. He talks about burning conceptual mind. What that means is that we see our thoughts and they disappear. It's like they incinerate. There's no smoke, I hope, but they evaporate, they disappear as soon as we see them, and then we're back here. So the only effort that we really put into our meditation practice is that little bit of effort when we realize that we have been lost in a dream, and we make the resolve to let it go and come back. And then when we come back, it's really effortless. That moment of awareness here, like your awareness of the computer screen, it's happening all the time, whether you make an effort or not. So why bother? Because it's right there with me blowing my nose. So the discipline of our meditation practice in Vipassana is to realize that we're thinking, see it, let it go, and then we're back. And he says, when the fuel of fixed concepts, those are the ideas, your thoughts, is burned up by the fire of discipline, that is, we see them and they just evaporate, they disappear, they burn, they're gone. We have nothing to hang on to. And having discovered nothing to hold on to, we find that the whole thing dissipates. That is the total experience of Vipassana. That disappearing of the distractions because we become aware of them. When we're lost in them, then they continue. We have this dream of whatever it is. But as soon as you realize you're dreaming, you're back and you're here. And we can see the desk, the image of ourselves on the computer screen and everybody else, hear the voice. Now he talks about Rikpa. And Rikpa is a term that has a number of meanings, but for our purposes tonight, the main two meanings that we want to consider are these. Rikpa literally means seeing. And what that means is that, or intelligence, you might say. And there are fundamentally two levels, at least, of Rikpa. One is that it's very familiar. It's scientific knowledge. It's the intelligence of science, of understanding worldly things. It's being able to play chess. So there's intuition involved. It's the intelligence of being able to solve quadratic equations, if you remember those from high school, whatever it may be. It's cleverness, it's intellectual fluidity and capacity, the ability to intellectually understand and manipulate. That's at the lower level, the ordinary, mundane Rikpa. The other meaning of Rikpa, though, has to do with seeing this space as lit with intelligence. And in that sense, the Rikpa is that very intelligence that permeates space, it permeates everything. It permeates phenomena, it permeates this table, it permeates the image on your computer screen, it permeates the sound, it permeates the sensation of whatever it may be, the tactile sensation. Rikpa is the intelligence that allows us to know what is happening in the world. And it also is the intelligence which sees the world as it truly is. And when I say as it truly is, I mean stripped of our preconceptions about it, stripped of our judgments about it, our thinking, this is good, that's bad, this is beautiful, that's ugly. And we just see these things as they are, as they arise, without our labels. That's Rigpa as well. He says here, in the larger vision of Vipassana, and this is talking about Vipassana, we are tuning in to both kinds of Rigpa. And especially when we rest in this awareness, it's the ultimate Rigpa. In the larger vision of Vipassana, beautiful flower petals and dog shit on the pavement are the same. At the same time, dog shit is still seen as dog shit. And a flower is still seen as a flower. Because we've got discriminating intelligence. But Rigpa sees them as the same because it strips them of our value judgments. Despite burning concepts, we are still even more intelligent. This is Rigpa. We see more clearly. When we're seeing through the veil of our fixed preconceptions, we're very reactive. And we're seeing it through idiosyncratic veils, things that have developed in us over time, perhaps even from our childhood. And if you are a Buddhist, perhaps even from previous lives. Predilections, likings, dislikings. And we see things through these veils. I mean, you can walk down the street or you can sit in a subway in Manhattan and you can look at the different people and have reactions to them based on your preconceptions. And then you can make an effort, realize that you're having those preconceptions, see them, let them burn away, and see that person that you're looking at as they are, which is very, very simple. He says, although we may not yet have experienced it, there is such a thing as complete awareness, beyond techniques of simple breathing meditation and walking meditation. Complete awareness. This is what Vipassana is leading to. It is the quality of then the intelligence of that complete awareness resting in this space. That intelligence is the Rigpa. He says we might not expect that there could be a state that is completely clear and empty, spacious, without any problems. However, it is possible, and we could experience it. A state that is completely clear and empty, spacious, without any problems. We come back to it. It's here. It's waiting for us. It is our Buddha nature, meaning our awakened nature. He says the space we live in is filled with perceptions and non-perceptions. It is like breathing pollution and fresh air simultaneously. And what he's talking about, the pollution, you see, is the concepts that arise in our minds and that pollute, that make us feel sad, that make us feel elated, that make us feel angry, that make us feel whatever we're feeling. And meanwhile, we're having these ongoing perceptions of the walls, the floor, the people around us. They're unstoppable. That's the pollution, those concepts, and the fresh air, that clear perception, simultaneously. We have them simultaneously in samsara. In Vipassana, we relate with both because you see your concepts and you let them go. But the emphasis, he says, is on the fresh air, that is, on that pure awareness. Vipassana experience is total experience that goes beyond techniques and beyond mindfulness. When we're doing it, it's effortless. It's just here. And in fact, it's not so much that you do it, but really, as he puts it in somewhere in here, that you see it. You see this awareness. You see how clear the space is and how simple and clear the objects in the space are. The six knowables, five senses and objects of mind. You see how clear they are. So you see it's not something you do. And you can tune in, you can come back and say, oh yeah, here it is again. This space of awareness. I see it. Come back and see it. Yeah, there it is. It is not so much that you can do it, but there is the possibility that you can see it. He says, through Vipassana, you have a different way of being in that you are more open to life, both psychologically and physically, because we're not lost in the dreams, in those repetitive, inappropriate, untrue, because they're not completely true, dreams. And the dreams are always about the past and the future. Vipassana is a growing up process. You discover that there are lots of things that your parents haven't told you, but you pick up yourself. It's a growing up process, a coming into your maturity as a real human being, as an adult human being. He says, shamatha, the practice of shamatha, focusing one-pointedly on an object, produces peace. Because we focus on one-pointedly on an object and we're giving up all those fraught ideas that populate our minds. Vipassana produces reality. Shamatha, peace, vipassana, reality. And it goes from the beginning to the very end of the path to enlightenment itself, although the name for the practice changes as it deepens. He says, through vipassana, you begin to realize how much of the world you have missed, and you begin to pay attention to it. Missed because we were lost in thoughts, lost in dreams. Walking down the street, so lost in a dream, you walk right by the place that you were heading towards. Didn't even notice it. You're obsessed with some endeavor. Maybe you want to make $1 billion. And the whole world divides into those people who are going to help you make the $1 million, who are going to obstruct you making the million or $1 billion. And then the rest of the people are just dross. And you walk through the world seeing it that way and think of what is being missed. And I'm just making it up because this is a portrait of a jealous God, one of the 6 realms of neurotic mind. Through shamatha and vipassana, you could have a cheerful, celebratory life. It's because we come back to living a cheerful life instead of being caught up in the unhappy dreams. He says, shamatha and vipassana work together. They're like the sun and moon, the sky and the earth, the ocean and the land, the 4 seasons. They just go together. And in fact, when you're practicing pure vipassana, there's no when you're practicing pure shamatha, vipassana is not there. But when you're practicing vipassana, shamatha is included. Because in order to practice vipassana, awareness of this space, this present moment, now, we have to come back from dream, which is the shamatha aspect. So we practice vipassana first, shamatha first, I keep speaking. And then we practice vipassana and it contains the shamatha. I think I'd like to pause here and invite anybody with questions, comments. Because this is really profound and maybe a bit heavy going. Trip.
Yeah, I'll just timing is everything. I found this chapter to be quite powerful. Last week's class, I felt like I was in a pretty tumultuous phase of life, and I found the statement, the larger vision of Vipassana in terms of the beautiful flower petals and dog shit, really actually a very helpful metaphor if you replace objects with life experiences, some of which are like rose petals and some of which are like dog shit. I just found that maybe that's one of the formulas for faith and for getting, the faith of Buddhism, getting through the very tough times. And it's hard, it's hard to view lousy situations or difficult situations the same as lovely situations. And so I just found that to be a really great way to kind of capture how to look at life experiences. And then I would just say that, through all of these experiences, the intensity of the feeling of growing up is really quite powerful. Some really deep experiences. So not a question, just wanted to share that.
What do you mean growing up?
I don't know how to articulate this. I mean, noticing thoughts, speech, actions, and seeing them more clearly, both good and bad, good thoughts, right thoughts, bad thoughts, and not wanting to, or really being capable of hiding from a more honest way of recognizing them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Like a lot lately, but I'll take it. It's good.
I think it's possible to change from accepting and rejecting the different aspects of our lives. The things that we just don't want. Somebody hurts your feelings and you just feel hatred for them. As you age, your body falls apart and you have these regrets for having lost the vitality of youth. We could see these things as opportunities for engagement, for dealing with, instead of going, oh no, I don't want that, in my life. And change the attitude completely.
Yes.
Including right up and into death itself. That completely. Quite a challenge, but quite an opportunity. An extraordinary opportunity. And each one of us has to face this alone and deal with it alone. And we can spend our lives running away saying, no, 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 I don't want that. I only want this, I don't want that. Or we can begin to take it all in and work with it in an intelligent way, which is really what the initial 2 chapters were about. We'll get to that. So thank you. That was really good.
Thank you.
Judy.
Judith, you're muted.
Yeah, I noticed. On page 368, towards the bottom of the last of the first paragraph, when the fuel of fixed concepts is burned up by the fire of discipline, we have nothing to hang on to. And having discovered nothing to hold on to, we find that the whole thing dissipates. When they say the whole thing, they're talking about fixed concepts?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Great. Thanks.
Yeah. It dissipates. I mean, it evaporates. It's like, it's funny.
Like coming back.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And all those thoughts, they just go poof. Yeah.
Yeah. They seem so heavy and so real.
They do.
And then they can just be gone.
Well, all we have to do is realize that we're thinking them, see them, and then you have the choice of whether to go back into it, the dream, or rest here in awareness. And then if you choose the latter, that whole dream self-incinerates. If you call it that, dissolves, disappears.
Yeah.
Maybe one more. Kurt, you have your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Well, I think you answered my question there, is that we talk about, it sounds so simple to realize that you're thinking, And then once you realize that, you're back in the present. But my experience is more that I realize I'm thinking and I continue to think. And maybe that's just what you were saying, that we have that choice at that moment. And I find it difficult that, once I'm caught in a thought, caught in the dream, and even when I notice that I'm dreaming, I tend to continue following that thought.
Often, but the next thought, the following, is a different thought, slightly or greatly. It might be greatly in the sense that you think, oh, darn it, I was having that thought again, and you castigate yourself, you criticize yourself for having thinking. That's another thought. But as soon as you see it, they dissolve, if only for an instant.
Yeah, it feels like the catching of it is so instantaneous, and then the thought is long and laborious.
But it doesn't have to be, because he talks about that in the beginning of this chapter, that you can begin to recognize that you don't make this awareness happen, this vipassana awareness. Rather, it's already happening. And you just let it, you recognize it. You come back, it's here now. It's in the walls, it's in the desk, it's in the sound of this voice, it's in the sensations of your body, it's everywhere. Literally. That awareness. It's unstoppable. It's who we are. So you can see it, you don't do it. If you're trying to do it, that becomes thought again. It's really a matter of seeing what's already there. This.
It just sounds so simple, and I'm sure it is so simple.
I'm quoting Trungpa Rinpoche. He used to say, "It's so simple. That's why nobody gets it," or why people don't get it. That was back in the very early days when we all were sitting there listening to him. Yeah, it's so simple. He said that's why nobody can get it. He's talking about Buddhahood, really. All right, let's talk about these other two chapters. The first one has the 4 categories of vipassana. And you see what all of this is about. These 4 categories and the 6 discoveries in the second chapter is about the fact that when you begin to come present into this space of awareness, you begin to become much more intelligent. And you can actually see how things are put together, how they arise, dwell, and disappear, and how they work together, one with the next. And these are different aspects of all of that. So our intelligence about the phenomenal world is greatly increased because we're coming out of dream and into simple awareness. So the first chapter of this, 47, which was about it was called the practice of awareness. And he goes through 4 categories of vipassana. The first, discriminating dharmas. And what he says is that it's like putting on glasses for the first time. Or, confess, I just had cataract surgery. And everybody who has cataract surgery says that once they begin to see again, with these new lenses that have been put into your eyes, they didn't realize how dull the world was because they were seeing it through such an opaque lens. And he says it's like putting on glasses, and I put cataract surgery, that you begin to realize what you were missing, the vividness and complexity and beauty of this world. So that's the first of these 4 categories of vipassana, if you call them a category. The second is that you're fully, it's called, you want to fully discriminating dharmas. Now, dharmas is a term, you're familiar with the term dharma in terms of teachings, but in the Hinayana psychology, dharmas are events that we experience momentarily, like the sound, like the changing on your computer screen of the light from one side of my face to the other. They happen instantaneously, these experiences. They're the experiences of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mind, thoughts. And all of these experiences arise as momentary experiences, and then they're gone. And those are called dharmas. They're sort of atoms, you might say, of experience. And so when he says fully discriminating dharmas, he's talking about how when you come back into vipassana awareness, you can see all of these arisings and passings away because you're not dreaming. You're not lost in some continuous movie. And you can see everything coming together, dissolving, changing. He says, you're fully able to separate how phenomena arise, dwell, and disappear. That's the second aspect of vipassana. So you see, this whole chapter was about the increased intelligence of your ability to perceive the phenomenal world and your mind with this vipassana awareness. The third one, completely comprehending the dharmas, means you're not overwhelmed by crude emotions, but you can dissect them clearly. You can see these crude thoughts, like the three poisons, passion, aggression, and stupidity, or indifference. And you're not overwhelmed by them. You see them, you understand them in the sense that you just see them completely. It's not understanding some story. And they dissipate. They only endure and plague us when we are lost in those thoughts, in the dream, and it's ongoing. You know, that person said this to me, and I said that to them, and then it got really nasty, and then and then we made up, and we tell this whole story, and then we're lost. But when we begin to see the thoughts clearly with vipassana awareness, then we are not overwhelmed. And this is all about seeing very crude thoughts. And the fourth one, completely investigating the dharmas, is seeing not only these crude thoughts like passion, aggression, and stupidity, and the emotions, like pride and jealousy and greed and hatred. It's all seeing tiny little movements of mind and how they arise, pass away, and then when they pass, here we are again in vipassana awareness. In Rigpa, this intelligence that sees the world as it is. So that's really these four categories of vipassana. It's really interesting, isn't it? This first one is just the shock of coming back. It's putting your glasses on. You were lost in a dream. You wake up from the dream. It's like putting your glasses on and seeing the world again. Second one is that you want to understand how everything arises and works together. So you understand relationships between people, all kinds of things. The third is that you can free yourself from and dissect. That means understand your crude, passionate thoughts. And the fourth is that you can do that even to subtle ones. Now, the other chapter 48, 6 discoveries, is basically an extension of that kind of treatment. And in that it's discovering, or it's having to do with the increased intelligence again of vipassana. So the first, but now it's getting more subtle. And in the first one, it's discovering the meaning of words. And really what this is about a lot of things. It's about the interplay between concept, language, and reality. It's really about the so-called two truths in Buddhism. The two truths are the absolute and the relative. The absolute is your experience as it arises and passes away in the moment. Fundamentally, it's indescribable, because if you were to try to describe all the subtleties of even just this desk that's in front of me and probably you, so many of you, it would take you forever to describe the way the grain changes, the color changes, the shape, all of it. The reality, though, is immediate. And that's the absolute truth. Immediate experience. Relative has to do with words. And what we do is we create a word, and it's like we write the word table on a tag, and we tie it or scotch tape it to the table. Those are words are. They're pointers. And in fact, the translation of the word for concepts or words in Tibetan is often tag. It's like a tag that we affix to our experience. So what we begin to discover is the meaning of words. And the fact is that they are just pointers towards the reality we experience. They are, as one teacher I had said, merely useful ways to take things. That's what words are. Useful. Useful like saying, okay, turn left here. And then you turn left. Now, the reality and the experience of turning left is incredibly complex and rich. But the direction can be very simple. That's the usefulness of words. And the problem is that sometimes our words or stories are out of sync with what we're experiencing, both our state of mind and what's going on in the world. And then we've got problems. In fact, they're always out of sync slightly, but still they can be useful ways to take things past the salt. And then you have the actual real experience of the person passing the salt. So he says, we learn to discriminate between the second discovery is learning to discriminate between our interpretations, these words, and reality, which is seeing the characteristics of reality. Because when we strip away the words and we just see that dog shit in the street, or we see that beautiful, rhododendron plant or whatever it might be, then we're actually experiencing the reality beyond the words, beyond the labels. And that's the second discovery. The first is simply that there's a difference between the reality and the words. The words are pointers. They are labels, tags attached to our experience. The second is that we begin to discriminate between them and see the characteristics of reality. And this is called the search for reality, that we want to experience it beyond our preconceptions and our judgments, which can be so powerful, those preconceptions and judgments. They can, not only can they obscure our vision of what is real, but they can plunge us into all kinds of neuroses. The third one is called, I forget what it's called, but it's basically the idea of what Rinpoche used to, he developed this idea with Allen Ginsberg, actually, the two of them, when they were writing poetry together. Allen became his student, and he made a distinction between what he called first thought and second thought. And first thought is just the simple, it's not really a thought, it's the apprehension of something in the world of the senses. And the second thought is the label attached to it. And that when we begin to appreciate those differences, then we begin to penetrate the world very profoundly. So for instance, when you meet someone and they're rude or aggressive towards you, he mentions this, that you can look beyond that simple fact of the rudeness and the aggression and understand deeply what's going on in that person. And that understanding will help you be much more intelligent in the way you relate to them and deal with them. Just by understanding what's behind the presentation. The fourth one is called discerning sides. And basically what this is about is discerning what is wholesome and what is not. And by wholesome, what we mean is that which leads us into this open awareness, this appreciation of the world as it's arising in the present moment. This world of vivid, constant color, sound, smell, taste. Presentation is vividness. It's constantly telling us what it is. And so we begin to be much more wholesome because we're not being lost in our neurotic, unwholesome, repetitive, conflicted dreams. And instead, we're beginning to step into the simplicity of this world as it arises. There's a tremendous giving up in here, a tremendous act of renunciation. And what we're renouncing is all that world of story about me and you and me and other and where we're going and what we're doing and who we are. I mean, it could be scary. We're stepping off into, as he puts it sometimes, centerless space because there's no reference point. There's no purpose. It's not like you have this huge purpose. You're giving up purposefulness. And instead, coming into this world where you can just play with the phenomena as they arise and pass away. And in fact, that term play is not my term. It's in the teachings. The Tibetan word is ropa. The fifth one of these 6 discoveries is you're discovering time, past, present, and future. Hope and fear are dependent upon these, past, present, and future, past and future mostly. And so we get believing in the past and the future. We get caught in the webs of hope and fear. He says, you could take advantage of your present. The past is in the present, and the present produces the future. Right now, we've all come to this place, this computer, and we know that the past was necessary for us to get here. And we know that when this class ends, we're going to go on and do other things. That's the future. It's the future and the past are both contained in the present. But at the same time, if we believe too completely in the past and the future, then we get caught up in the whole karmic dream, the dream of wanting to avoid what we didn't like or we think we didn't like now. But now we're thinking that we didn't like in the past or that we did like in the past and wanting to have that play out in this imagined future. Like we want to avoid the things we didn't want in the past and we want to cultivate the things we enjoyed in the past in this imagined future. So that involves us in the karmic enslavement. That's what karma really means, is that we are caught in these dreams and we're trying to live them out from the past into the future. And finally, the 6th discovery is of the more mundane Rigpa, the cleverness of intelligence, scientific knowledge of cause and effect, understanding karma and natural law. That we begin, the vipashyana produces this because we can see how we become enslaved to our karmic dreams and how we can come out of them and into intelligence. There are some afterthoughts about this, that all of this is produced by the clear seeing and thinking of vipassana, coming into this present moment. You don't pursue it. It's not like you read through this stuff, you study and say, okay, I'm going to pursue that one. Rather, what happens is that as you practice, you sit on your cushion and practice, and ideally, you take it into daily life because vipassana on the cushion in daily life, they're identical. It's just that when you sit on the cushion You're setting aside a time and devoting it to it. In daily life, we have a lot more triggers that take us off into dream as we walk down the street, talk to people, do whatever we're going to do. So it's helpful to sit on the cushion. But the practice of vipassana is the same, whether you're on the cushion or in daily life. And you develop all these understandings through the practice. They come. And really, we study these things not to go and pursue them, but to recognize them when they come to us. He says, vipassana is the heart of the Dharma. It is the absolute heart from beginning to end. And there's no mystery. You are given it all up front. And it applies to all of life, to absolutely everything. When you're taking a shit, when you're having an orgasm, when you're lying on the operating table and they're just about to put you under, you can have vipassana in every situation. It's always a matter of coming back to the fundamental intelligence with which we are born. So I'll stop there and we can have a discussion again.
I have a question.
Let's see. Who was that?
Tony.
Tony. Is it Tony?
Me?
Question. I don't know if someone else did. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
Oh,
Go ahead, Tony.
you
Okay,
sure?
we'll get to everybody.
Okay. This notion of first thought from Trungpa. Now, I'm assuming from the reading that first thought is basically what you would call unadorned thought. And as you said in your talk this evening, that second thought is when you add words to that, when you articulate that through words. So my question is, and it interests me because I am trying to just become one with the brush when I'm decorating my ceramic pieces. So I am trying to work with first thought to do these things without putting a whole lot of verbal overlay over them. How is it possible to recognize first thought? I mean, do we intuitively know that we're having an unadorned thought?
It's not even a thought. It's really just the naked experience of your brush and the color happening. The thought of now I'm doing it is a second thought. See? The first thought is the naked, bare attention experience. Because in the Theravada tradition, they call this bare attention. It just means naked awareness. And the second thought is the comment. And you don't try to get rid of any kind of thought. Second thought, you just see it and it takes care of itself. If you try, then you complicate it endlessly and you get caught up in an effort, a philosophical effort, which is even worse, or a religious effort. So you just see it and it will go. And you can just do it and see the difference between the thought and the reality, which is the second thought, which is the comment, and the reality, which is the so-called first thought. That's what he called first thought.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I understand. Thank you.
They developed this for poems.
I think Trungpa worked with this also with his own artwork, didn't he? This idea of first thought, this just moving into the work and working freely with everything?
Absolutely. I mean, he was an artist. He was a painter. He was a calligrapher. He was a master flower arranger. He literally had a degree in flower arranging from a school in London that taught flower arranging. And then he was a poet. He wrote poems endlessly, many. And he regarded art, this first thought, as the expression of vipashyana, of the mind of meditation, of the mind of reality.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful stuff. And so, Meg, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, thank you. So you said that Rigpa is the intelligence within the awareness. And where I go with that is sort of a knee-jerk reaction. I think of God, and it's a bit of a stumbling block for me. So I'm trying not to go there with it. But I wonder if that intelligence, does it have grace?
Absolutely. Huge grace. Huge grace. And not only that, but it's not so much that that these are things, like the intelligence is within the awareness. It's more like that ancient trope about, the 6 blind men and the elephant. And one of them feels its leg and says, oh, this elephant is like a tree. And the other feels its ear and says, oh no, it's like a giant leaf. And the other feels its side and says, oh no, it's like a house, and so forth. All of these words are pointing to different aspects of the real. The real is what it is. Rigpa refers to the intelligence that inhabits the real. Vipassana is the awareness of the space of it. And there are lots of other terms for it. Lots, all pointing to different aspects of the elephant.
Okay.
Yeah, and does it have grace? Oh my gosh. The entrance into Vipassana is total grace. It's effortlessness. It's a connection with the real. It lights us up. We see the world through the lens of appreciation.
So it wants us to experience it.
Absolutely. It's waiting for us.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Judy.
It's just there. And as far as painters go, it's the impulse. But if you're dealing with words, it seems to me to get much trickier, because words as a medium have to be words with meaning and so forth. So first thoughts with words, it seems a much harder thing to accomplish, or to come from or go to.
It's harder to accomplish in direct proportion to your self-doubt and self-criticism. Let go of that, and it's not hard at all. Then it becomes a play, a ropa. But it's our desire to create something of value that we feel is worthy. And our self-criticism Self-doubt stops this kind of creativity dead in its tracks.
So with words, you would just use whatever came first to mind.
Yeah, but then you can go back later and edit it, you know, if you want.
Sure, sure.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's a standard old saw in writing that the number one cause of writer's block is editing while you write,
Yeah, right.
right? Which is a form of self-doubt, self-criticism.
Yeah.
So you got to give it up. Same thing for every artist. Same thing for our lives. If we want our whole lives to become art, the thing that impedes us is that self-criticism,
Mhm.
self-attack. So powerful.
And
We
then-
have Christy, Karen, Sue, and Valerie.
Thanks, Mary. Christy.
Great. Thanks so much for this, John and Barry and everybody. All your work to set all this up and all the love you.
You're muted.
Muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Christy. Can't
No,
hear
she
you.
just froze. There was a problem with her connection.
And kind of, especially for me, I think I came to this path out of, out of some deep suffering and I'm sure many of us kind of have stumbled on this in that way, and kind of a claustrophobia that just became so tight that I needed to get out. and I felt just my world opening in so many ways. Once I started to look out or in instead of out, and just realize I was going the wrong direction. So I think what this has to do with is then, so through this kind of suffering, I've sort of come to this, and I recognize that I get stuck in these certain cycles of, like, I don't know if you call it trauma or like, but there's certain stories that are really sticky that I notice when I'm, especially in meditation. And I just wonder if there's any sort of advice for, like, sticky cycles of, I can tell that there's a lot of self-criticism that comes in, because I feel like I've done some, I feel like this coming to the path has helped alleviate so much of these heavy stories and these cycles, because I'm starting to kind of loosen myself from them. But I still notice that, like, when I'm in like this morning when I was meditating and I was having these like little open moments, but there was just a particularly sticky cycle of, I recognize old thought patterns that are just still there. And I'm upset that they're still there. And I'm, I guess any sort of advice for getting in those sticky cycles, and, like, is there a point when, like, maybe they start to burn, like I'm trying to burn these thoughts up, and especially the sticky cycles that are still there, that I notice that are still there. And yeah, I don't know, any sort of thoughts about that, or like if anybody has any experience that resonates with that process.
I mean, what these chapters are all about is about applying your awareness to seeing those sticky thought cycles clearly, how they arise, how they dwell, and how they pass. And so, as an example, I could give you an assignment. Take one of those sticky thought cycles, write it up. And if you feel comfortable, send it to me, and we'll talk about it. But write it up, really understand it, communicate it.
Thank you. I recognize that they're different. They have their own like sort of idiosyncrasies about them, and their own kind of weight and they are for me like much denser and heavier, you know, and kind of, and I mean they're really repetitive. And okay, yeah, I think I will definitely, I'll
But
take.
the thing is this, they are different, but when you begin to unravel one, it makes it much easier to unravel this. And by unravel, I mean understand, see clearly. It makes it much easier to unravel the second and the third. It snowballs.
Yeah, and just see it as like, I understand, like I think like getting caught in it, I could see myself like really analyzing it and looking at it and then but I think I understand, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's more just that, yeah, that clear seeing that just lets it come and lets it go and just sees it for what it is and isn't, you know, trying to analyze it so much or like yeah, it's, I think that I understand that. Yeah, thank you for that.
If you can describe it to yourself without trying to get rid of it.
Got it.
Like you're creating a literary document. You know?
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
you
Okay.
would find
Okay.
it helpful.
Thanks.
Sometimes I try to just befriend them when they come now. I just become just more welcoming of those thoughts and those feelings and those hurts. And I don't know, I just, it might sound crazy, but I talk to them and say, oh, you're back. Okay. And I have a gentler relationship with them because of this practice, Christy. Anyway, that's all I'll say. Thanks.
Mary.
No, that's
Thank
good,
you.
Mary.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to pop in here too. I have a teacher who says she laughs at her brain.
Laughs what?
She laughs at her brain. But there you go again, you know. She finds it like amazingly creative. There you go again. I'm adding that there you go again, but it's the lightness, the humor. Even the way you put it though, you said sticky. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny.
Humor.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, definitely been something that's come up more with the path and yeah, humor. It's great. Thank you. It's also helpful.
Mary, who you had.
Oh, Karen Sue and Val, both.
Karen Sue.
So, John, you said something about purpose. And my question is, what's left if I give up purpose?
Purpose is so involved with philosophy, value judgments, ideas of the past and the future. What's left is the way they describe enlightened beings in the teachings is playing with this world, with appreciation, with love, with intelligence, delight, a constant rolpa, they say in Tibetan, meaning a play, and with great compassion and openness, and being helpful to others who are suffering.
So when you said that, there was just this excitement inside of me. It was like, what would I have left if I give up purpose? And it was exhilarating, like, wow, wouldn't that be exciting? So I'm going to, it was really strong. And yet purpose to me was kind of the security blanket. So there was this kind of two-sided thing, like really exciting, but you know, when you give that up, you're jumping off the cliff. So it was really quite profound for me tonight. So thank you.
I can't resist telling a story that I know some of you have heard, but it's such a a beauty for me. When I first met Trungpa Rinpoche, I was really spiritually seeking. In fact, I was planning to go to India, and I got short-stopped by him. And I was going to go have a spiritual journey in India, I thought. Anyhow, after we met, and he had a very profound impact on me, and unexpectedly, he invited me to come. This was up at what's now Karmate Choling in Vermont. It was a ramshackle farmhouse, and he had a very tiny bedroom. And he invited me to come visit him in his bedroom anytime. Right? And I was very frightened to do that. But one day I screwed up my courage, and I went and stood in front of the door and knocked. And what I didn't know was that on the other side of that door, he was sitting on the bed in this tiny bedroom, and a bunch of students were sitting around the bed. He had been invited by a local minister to be on one of those televised Sunday talk shows, that ministers would run. And he had accepted the invitation. And in preparation, the minister had sent him a questionnaire to fill out so that he, the minister, would have a better idea of who his guest was. And Franny Lewis, was a dear friend of mine later, she was reading him the questions, and she had just read him the question as I knocked on the door: what is the purpose of life? So the door swung open. He turned and looked at me over his shoulder, and he delivered the answer to her, but I thought he was talking to me. All I see is this: the door opens, he turns, he looks at me, and he says, the purpose of life is to have no purpose. If you have a purpose, you just make a nuisance of yourself, to yourself and everyone else. I just felt totally skewered, because I had this big purpose. I've never forgotten that. I've quoted it so many times, but this is utterly Buddhism. You just make a nuisance of yourself. Oh, God. Okay, wait a second. We had somebody before you, Peter.
Valerie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
All of you. Wow. When I first approached, especially the second chapter, I thought, okay, I can put up with 4 things, but 6? It was like, wow. I just was so resistant to it. But through tonight's discussion, it's like it becomes much clearer. The whole idea of stories. I'm a writer, and so and I consider it, a creative process, and I like to tell stories on paper. I'm not a good storyteller. I can't tell a joke. I crack myself up. I'm terrible at telling stories, but writing them, once I start writing, I guess I can call it flow. Um, it happens sometimes, not every time. And I love this quote. It's carved into a sidewalk in our neighborhood, and it says, "Self-doubt is the enemy of creativity." It's a quote by Sylvia Plath, and I go for a walk, and I'm so grateful for that reminder. So when I tell myself a story that I label not good enough, uh, as Christy said, a sticky thing that I can't quite get out of I find that kindness, softness, I haven't found the humor key yet, but I work at, oh, that's okay to feel that way. Do I want that anymore? Is it serving me anymore? No. So I try to be kind to myself. And the last thing I want to say about the whole uh, purpose and philosophy subject is the freedom. When I don't have that, I must do this because this is the reason. I have to have that book published. I have to have blah, blah, blah. When I let go of it, I have so much more freedom to make mistakes, to be kind to myself. And that's a challenge sometimes. But practice on the cushion is just like training wheels for life. Thank you.
Peter.
Yes, I'd like to address a few words to Christy. I sat here listening to her, and if anybody would like to know what my question was, you can refer to her, because I am not exaggerating in saying that practically word for word, she expressed exactly and precisely what was going on for me. I don't have an answer, although I will say that I like very much, I have the say exactly the same, what can you say, blocks, and however she called them. I appreciate very much what John said about the writing, because I've always been a very verbal person and kind of lazy about writing. So maybe I will take to that. But what she has said has moved me enormously, and I'm not going to try. I'm not going to try. My reaction is to let it all percolate inside me, and then allow what will come out, if anything does come out, for this very serious dilemma. But meanwhile, I just would like to thank her profusely and let her know that she is certainly not alone.
Thank you so much for that. Funny enough, what sort of came out of this morning, there was a moment where, and I'd been listening. I went on a road trip and I just got back from Los Angeles, 16 hours in the car, and at moments when my kids weren't bugging me about being bored or are we there yet, I was listening to Pema Chodron at this podcast that she did on fear. It was From Fear to Fearlessness, and there was some Tonglen, there was some practices that she offered, and one of them was really hitting up this idea hard that just when you feel the suffering, to just say, to yourself, there are others that are feeling the same way, and so I kind of was listening to this on this road trip, and you never know when it actually becomes real in your experience. But that in that moment of that sticky thing that was coming back to me that keeps reoccurring, I did remember in that moment to just sort of say, and this is for all people, for other people that are also feeling this. And I just sort of put it out there, like I didn't really believe it, but I was like, maybe, and I really felt this sense of like, it did open things up, like it opened it up just to say that. And I just got this reinforcement from, I don't really know where, but there was a moment, and that is what opened it up a little bit. was just remembering that. And I was from just listening to that Tonglen, you know, just, I don't know, the way she put it in a certain way just must have stuck, helped me unstick a little bit. I don't know. So thanks, Peter. I really recognize that. Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Letting
And
other
anytime.
people feel it too. Thanks.
We're getting towards the end. Jane, do
Robert.
you have something you wanted to say
Uh,
before?
Robert has had his hand up.
Okay.
Hey, ladies first.
Jane doesn't seem to have anything. So, no.
Well, the last three comments really touched on it, something for me, and I realized that from this conversation that the word to recognize something is really important, and that comes for me in an instant. Like 2 days ago, I was driving and this cottontail rabbit says running across the street in front of me. I'm like, oh, rabbit, you know, like that. And then that was it. The rabbit was back there. You know, I didn't think about the rabbit anymore, except maybe I should go back and see if I killed him or whatever. But I think that what gets my attention a lot is to realize the suffering that I cause myself when I get fixated on something that is, and when I recognize it, when I realize it, when I recognize it, it's all from the past. It's something from the past that I keep presencing it and putting it into the future. And to not, like you said, John, earlier, to not try to get rid of it, that's also, for me, that's another trap. And to philosophize about the whole thing, that was so dangerous. Oh my God. It's like flushing the toilet bowl. I'm gone. You know? So, yeah, for me, the word recognize, to recognize something. And when I recognize something, there doesn't have to be any words behind it. So I'd like to know if there's something you'd like to add to that.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, friends, unless we have any other, oh, Jane, this will be the last. Okay.
I feel the pressure. I loved these 3 chapters. I felt it brought me so much clarity, and in a way, it unpacked all the stuff. I kept looking and saying, okay, we're almost 400 pages in, and I'm finally beginning to get it. So this one line, the last line in chapter 48, we are training in how to live our life. We are training in how to live our life. This is so simple and so comforting. I just needed to say that. It was like, okay, Jane, you got to the good part, you know?
That's terrific. Well, friends, I think we should close it up. We could do the dedication of merit, if you will. By this, we're dedicating the merit to the benefit of all sentient beings. And it actually is a wonderful way to practice, helps us practice better. And we have a discussion group tomorrow night. So if there was something that you didn't say and want to say, please come. We have a lot of fun in these discussion groups, I think. Everybody speaks. And here we go. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. I think especially this last quatrain, which is from the Shambhala teachings, is very applicable to our discussion tonight. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. That's self-doubt and thoughts of the past and the future. And may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. That's the beauty of this world as it arises now. The beauty and the vividness. So, thanks everybody. And see you next week, if not before.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everybody. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
John, thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, John.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
See you in the morning.
Right.
Yeah, we practice tomorrow.
Till then, bye-bye.
Good night. Sorry I got here late. I was on another call.
It's okay. You can watch the recording if you need to.
Thank you. I will. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Good night,
Peter.
Peter. And
Good
Meg,
night.
Ed.